events for LWiC. I will be your moderator for today alongside Marine. Marine, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, so hello everyone. I'm Hireen and I'm the president for LWiC and I will be moderating the session alongside Umme and I'm really looking forward to it.
All right. So to start off, I'd like the panelists to introduce themselves one by one. I'd like you to tell us about yourself, about your position at your company, your years of experience, and what inspired you to enter the design industry. Kanza, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. So, hi everyone. I'm Kanza. I work at VentureDive as a UX designer. I'm specifically working on in a product team, in the Islamic Finder team, uh, app and Muslims app. So, how I got into UX design is a lot of people get here in graphic design. I have a brain and MFA in graphic design from day one. I moved to UI, then UI UX, and then to product design. So this is where I am. So what inspired me to get into UX basically was I started off in graphic design. I was in advertising. So advertising, although was interesting, but it wasn't as fulfilling as UX is. So that's what sort of inspired me and sort of nudged me to move to a more fulfilling field. So this is how I got here.
All right. Thank you, Kanza. Moazam, would you like to go next?
Yeah, hello everyone. So I'm Moazam. I'm currently working as a UX researcher at Cheetay. So basically, I graduated back in 2018 from LUMS, where I studied HCI, and that's how I basically found out my love for user experience. So I think what motivates me to be in UX is that it is the nearest thing to invention these days. You're constantly solving different problems, and there's a there's a good feeling about it when you're solving different complex problems in the industry. So yeah, basically that. Before coming to Cheetay, I was a user experience analyst at SmashCloud. So SmashCloud was a services company where I looked at the business needs, I looked at business requirements, and also I looked at wireframing and the UX design for enterprise softwares. So yes, yep.
Thank you, Moazam. Sania, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I'm Sania, and I started my journey back in 2018. Actually, way before that, because I was working with Dr. Sulaiman even before I graduated and everything. So I graduated in CS with a focus in HCI, and then I also sort of minored in marketing, which had already given me sort of an edge in understanding of how the marketing side of things operate and everything. After that, I moved to Karachi for a year. I worked at UBL as a UX specialist, and they were like one of the pioneer organizations to have inaugurated a digital design lab. So that was really something at that time back in 2018. After a year, after working on their customer journeys and the banking application and whatnot, I moved back to Lahore, and I joined Systems Limited as a design strategist. Over here, like over the past 1.5 to almost 2 years now, I've been working on multitudes of things. I've worn different hats. I've worked in a business analyst role, I've worked as implementation analyst, I've done everything from product management to project management to handling doing the scrum part of things and everything. So it's been a long journey for me that way, and here I am now working at Systems Limited as their senior consultant of UX strategy. So if I specifically talk of what inspired me to be in this field, it has to be the fact that this field has given me a sense of internal reward, a mechanism of that. For instance, when you're working in UX or when you're working in design thinking and all of it, you are essentially problem solving, whether it's for the masses, whether it's for niches or whatsoever. You're finding a solution to a problem and you're helping out people. And that for me was my biggest motivation. And my mentor, Dr. Salman Shahid, has been the one who has, made me actualize and internalize this feeling of reward, which is so important for me today.
Thank you, Sania. Hussam, would you like to go next?
Sure. So hello, everyone. My name is Hussam. My journey into design began mostly with the aesthetic side. That's what got me into it. But then I took a couple of courses at LUMS that helped me realize that there's this really huge functional side to design as well, which is what Sania was alluding to when she was talking about design as a problem-solving tool. So that really intrigued me, and particularly I was always interested in working in the social sector, so I wanted to somehow merge the two, and that's what I've been doing so far. I've been working as a designer for about 4 years now. I started off at Recult, which was a startup that was working on a technology-based solution to help smallholder farmers. So my role there was basically to design and develop the different apps that we had by talking to farmers and different stakeholders within the agriculture supply chain. And from there, I moved on to Ideate Innovation, which is one of the few pure design consultancies in Pakistan. So what we do is we offer digital and service design services to our clients. And my role here is that of a design researcher. So essentially, what I do is I work with different NGOs and nonprofits to design research studies that try and utilize human-centered design to explore problems in the social development sector. And so the output of this is usually it's either in the form of a product strategy or the design of a service. And so this is basically of what I do. And what I particularly like about using human-centered design is that the lower you go down the socioeconomic ladder, the more important it becomes to really talk to the people who you are developing solutions for, because the technology that we all use today, it was designed, keeping, well, mostly Westerners in mind. But even if you come to Pakistan, it's people like me, like all of our panelists here, we're fairly educated, we're fairly tech savvy. So it's easy, it comes naturally for us. But when you go down the socioeconomic ladder, it's really important to talk to the people that you're developing these solutions for, to really learn what their challenges are and what their behavioral basically instincts are when they interact with technology.
All right, thank you, Hussam. Now let me give you a quick overview of the structure of our panel talk. This session is divided into 4 phases. Let's start by getting a bit of an overview of the design industry. So my first question is, actually it's not a question, it's just an insight. Please share an overview of the industry in Pakistan with regards to the kind of work that is going on and the size of the labor force in this industry, etc. Sania, would you like to take that question?
Yeah, sure. So if I talk about, the kind of work going on in the industry right now, we all know that, the mindset that we are operating in these days is the digital first mindset. And, all of these traditional organizations that, we thought would be rigid to, shift to that sort of a mindset are, now inaugurating these kind of labs and, hiring all of these UX resources. And from all sorts of organizations, whether it's a startup or whether it's, some organization that's 60-year-old, they now are looking for people in, more of UX roles, strategy roles, design roles, and whatnot. So I personally think that, the industry at this point is growing, keeping in mind that, customer expectations around digital and, experiences are constantly on the rise, and they're like, increasing day after another. So if I specifically highlight on the size of industry right now, I feel there was the survey recently in the group, which was the results of the surveys were posted in the UXTB group, which had around 350 respondents, or over a little over that. And that survey, specifically highlighted that, most of the labor force in this industry right now is in between the age bracket from 23 to 27 years old, which actually kind of shows us that, all of the people in the industry right now are fairly young. Not all of this was around like 62% of the chunk of the respondents. So it actually tells us that, now more people are coming with the right degrees and with, the right education and all of these things into the industry. And which is why we should have like, a brighter future as far as this industry is concerned. And we should look forward to, more growth within this industry. As far as and now even within this field, as far as UX designers are concerned or visual designers are concerned, we do have a fairly good chunk of people applying for these jobs out there as well, and we also have like a lot of roles focusing on these kind of things. But what I would specifically call a niche in the market today are the roles where UI UX design overlaps with research, or it overlaps with business, or it overlaps with engineering, or it overlaps with marketing. So if the people who know how to work at the intersection of all of these fields, then that is where the industry would be moving in the next couple of years. That's just my hunch. I'm sure like other panelists have other opinions on it.
Yeah, so I'd like to add to what Sanya said in terms of the size of the industry. There are a lot of open roles and not as many people coming in. So that has a couple of reasons behind it, because there's no direct pipeline to UX design, right? There are people coming in either from CS background, so they have to learn design by themselves, so that there's a lot of self-learning involved, and there are people who are coming in from a design background, so they don't really know anything about tech, so there's a lot of learning involved there, and that is also mostly self-learning. So because it requires a lot of skills, so and not many people are willing to learn a thing which isn't directly related to their majors, right? So there are a lot of positions, but there aren't as many people, or what I predict won't be as many people for a long time, unless or until some universities develop programs which sort of fuel a direct pipeline to UX design. So if anyone's wants to come into the industry is ripe right now. It is the right time.
Yes, I think it's you both have like summarized it fairly well, and I totally agree to what Kanza is saying, that there are there's a lack of UX designers, and even in terms of the industry, I think the industry itself is learning what user experience is, and they are also maturing towards that. So as far as the general dynamics of the industry is concerned, I think we should discuss that as well to as an answer to this question. Is that there are we need to differentiate about the different types of companies that hire for UX designers, right? So there's at one end there's softwares. There are software houses which are primarily working in the services industry, having clients abroad, and then there are product product companies, and thirdly there are these design studios. So it varies very much about the what you do at the company based upon what company you go in, right? It's totally different in UX. Practices are totally different in product compared to what there are in services or design studios as well.
All right, I'll move on to the next question. What kind of roles are available for fresh graduates, and what is the level of design maturity in Pakistan?
If I were to answer that, I just feel that when I started off in this field, there was just a concept of a visual designer or a UX designer, and that was the only title available in the market out there. When I look at the industry right now, which this isn't like long ago, I'm just talking about like 2.5 years back. When I look at the industry right now, there are a lot more titles and there are a lot more JDs out in the market right here within this field, whether it's that of a strategist, whether it's of a CX researcher, UX researcher, visual designer, usability tester, all of these things. So initially all of these roles were categorized under one umbrella, which was a UX and designer, and people had no clarity on what their niche was or what they were supposed to do. And it's completely okay to have to work to work among the breadth of things and not in the depth side of things. But right now in the industry, there are a lot more titles offered, and there are a lot of variations from that end as well. And the industry has, which actually shows that the industry has matured a lot more as compared to back when I graduated, or even back then.
Yeah, I'll just add to what Moazam said earlier that there are very different types of roles. There are services and there are products and there are design agencies. What the difference between these is that a product is very in depth and you work on one project throughout, right? Uh, Whether it's 2 years, 3 years, you'll be working on one product. Like maybe Moazam is working on Cheetay, right? And in terms of services, you'll be switching between different sorts of projects, and so you get a breadth of experience. Uh, if you're just starting out, I would say that experiment a lot and say yes to a lot of things and see what fits. For example, I started out in graphic design, then I moved to services, and then I realized that services isn't what I really want to do. I want to work in a product and go in depth on one product, not stay on a service surface level on a lot of different products. So that is why I moved to product, but I only discovered that when I experimented with a lot of things. So when you're just starting out, just go out into the industry and say yes to a lot of things and just experiment and see what fits for you.
Although, I would also like to add that, I would like to slightly differ from Kanza in a way that
Mhm.
I think it is important for a fresh graduate to go into services first, because that gives you the diversity of projects, that the diversity of problems that you tend to solve, on a daily basis. You solve different problems. You work on multiple projects. You manage them. You manage your time, and the rigor of services the industry in Pakistan is, I think, what is necessary for for your talent to shine out when you are new in the industry. So going into services, going into product is when, like, you think you're mature enough, as a designer, that you want to settle down with a company that is at a slower pace, and you want to focus on in the depth of that. So, like, these are just stages of learning that I think one needs to go through first in that.
Yeah,
But what
exactly. Is work. Yeah, Sunny, do you want to go ahead?
No, no, I was just going to counter to Moazam. I just wanted to bring up the fact that, it's again about the lens you're looking at things from. For me, I worked on a project first. I understood the journey from, from its inception to its end, learned the entire stages and all of the process of it. And now when I'm working in services, I know what the entire journey is, and I'm asked to apply a part of that journey onto my different services projects. So it's just about whether you're looking, from this lens or that lens kind of a situation here. Yeah.
Maybe.
I think I can perhaps sort of clarify what everybody's trying to say. So everybody has different opinions for the exact same reason of what Kanza mentioned earlier, which is that you really need to experience this yourself to realize what you like. You need to experience it yourself to see whether you like working on a specific product and going into its depth, or do you like working on different problems, which means you're more suited towards like a consulting based role. But what's really important is to first realize that you need to experience this yourself to realize what you like. But what I would highly recommend to anyone looking to work in the design industry is to try and look for a company that actually takes design seriously. Because there are a lot of companies in Pakistan that'll hire you as a UI designer or UX designer, but in the end you'll essentially just be making screens without putting any real thought into it, right? Just make something that looks pretty. So that's what you don't want to be doing if you want to pursue a career in UX. So when you are looking to towards your first job, I would recommend to honestly not look at the money, just look at the learning, because that is really, really important in this field. And only go to a company where you talk to the people who are working there, who have worked there. They'll help you out and they'll help you realize whether or not they have a mature design practice, because what you want to really be learning is what the actual meaning of design is and how it can bring value into the general problem solving process that pretty much any company follows. So that should be your focus.
All right. I actually had more questions related to this, but you answered them already. So we'll move on to the second phase, where the panelist will guide us through some of the things that are essential to know before applying for a UI/UX job. So my first question is, what courses to take during undergrad and what professors to work with, what kind of projects to work on? Hussam, would you like to take that question?
Sure. So, I mean, an obvious choice is Sir Suleiman, right? He was sort of the pioneer of HCI at LUMS. But I graduated in 2017, and when I graduated, Sir Suleiman was the only person there, but I believe more people have joined. So I would actually not comment on the instructors myself. I leave that to the other panelists. But as far as the courses go, so UX is particularly if you're working in the research side, like I am, it's 50% psychology, it's 50% people based, right? So you want to really learn how people think and how they behave and why they behave that particular way. So I would highly recommend that you take psychology courses while you're an undergrad. And I know at LUMS, that's definitely a possibility. I would also recommend that you take anthropology courses, essentially anything that has to do with, studying people and, why they think the way they do. So that's something that I would definitely recommend in terms of courses.
Yeah, to add to Hussam, I feel like he has perfectly summed it up that, this field is more about understanding your users. And for that, you have to have an understanding of how they operate and the entire, psyche of things and whatnot. Other than that, I feel like you must take, courses, HCI topics in interactive computing. They really, broaden up your view and make you understand things from, a broader lens. um, I would also endorse taking software engineering for people who are non-CS majors. Software engineering is one course which, people feel like, all right, this is a course. It's probably, very, very techy and it's not related to us. But when you're in this field, you realize the importance of, agile project management, lean methodologies, and all of these things, that are applied in the industry today and are very much in demand. So I also encourage people to, take that. Other than that, what I would highly recommend is taking marketing courses. Now, being someone who has done a marketing minor at LUMS, I just know that, how all of these marketing courses focus on your consumer and how they sort of study and embed consumer behavior in how they've designed their courses. So naturally, I mean, having studied marketing courses naturally gave me an edge in this industry, especially when you're going to be in a consumer facing role. You know how your consumer is thinking, you know how they operate on, and you know the business value of things that you're working on and the problems that you're solving. And there are a couple of courses offered by the LUMS Business School, SDSB. There's new media techniques. There are a couple of courses by Sir Zain Khwaja, and I'm sure the catalog would cover them all. They're also by Dr. Fararif and all of them. So yeah, marketing
Yeah.
would really.
Yeah, so adding on to what Sunny and Sam have very well summarized, I would say that you could also look at some courses that kind of build up your analytical skills as well. So it is important to analyze functionalities when we are talking, especially in services. When you have certain requirements, you want to analyze them. You want to go deep into them and figure out how I could solve the problems that are at hand by at hand with using wireframes or any other thing, any other tool you want to use. So analytical skills plus everything that Hussam and Sunny have already said, I think that would be all for it.
All right. And what kind of projects should we work on considering we want to go to industry later? And when's the best time to start working on those projects?
Okay, so I'll answer
Yeah,
that.
go ahead.
Okay, sure.
Uh,
So I think working on projects throughout helps. So assume you are not a design major, so you want to build that part of your put skill set as well. So maybe start working on any sort of design projects to build up your skills. Those could be graphic design projects, or it could be basic UI design projects. Just build that skill through whatever means, right? You could be working on social media marketing for any Facebook page, for example, to build that skill skill. Don't think from a mindset that you will end up in social media marketing. Think that this is a skill that you need to build, and you have to do it through any means necessary, right? So you could do that, or maybe you can build an application you have it for your final year project, and you can design it yourself. So it can start from anytime you want. It can start from your freshman year. You can start working on that if you know this is what you want to do. So just complement those skills which you are not building within your course structure. And okay, one good way to think about this is look at job postings. They list 10 to 12 different skills, and see which of these skills you are getting from your courses and from your sort of the entire 4-year education, and which you won't be able to attain within that course structure, and try building those skills on the outside by yourself. So that does help.
All right. I had a question. I had another question regarding applying for a job before UI UX job. So, how much does internships matter in the design industry?
So I mean, again, I would go back to what I said earlier. The internship's only as useful as the place that you're working at. So as long as you know where you're going actually has a mature design practice. And what I mean by a mature design practice is a company that diligently tries to apply design to its day-to-day processes. That's where you want to go and work. So for example, I can give you an example of what I had to do when I moved from Recult to Ideate. I was working at a full-time job at Recult, but because I really wanted to work at a place where essentially, design is explored in its purest form, I found out about Ideate, which is a design consultancy that purely focuses on design and its application. So that's where I wanted to work. So I left my full-time job and actually joined as an intern. And not many people would do that like 1 year into their career, but I think that was something that was extremely helpful for me, because that's when I really realized how to actually take a problem and then apply the design thinking framework to it. Because at Recult, it was basically just me and me trying to use my own imagination, and I didn't really have someone to learn design from. So you want to try and really work at a place or intern at a place where you have those people that you can learn from.
I'd like to add to what Hussam said as well. My journey was more or less similar to that as well. I started out in advertising. I was working full time for a year. I had a full time role in an advertising agency. But then I interned at a software house. And from there on, I moved to a full time UX position. So this was very difficult. You do not want to leave your full paying job to an internship with pays next to nothing, right? A year into your career. It's very discouraging. Your friends will discourage you. A lot of people will say a lot of things that you're not doing this right, but you have to do what you have to do. If you have your vision, right, that this is where I want to be, I don't care about how I get there, I have to get there. So yeah, internships are
All right.
important.
Yeah, I mean, essence of all of it is that it's the quality of work that you're doing, whether it's at a software house, whether it's at a startup, whether it's even working as an RA with your instructor. It's just the quality of work that you're doing, and that is circling back to Hussam's point that you got to do what you love and figure that out.
All right. My next question is what tools and skills, both technical and soft skills, should we know beforehand before we apply for a job?
I think in terms of tools, I don't think that there's you can learn any tool that you want to do. But if you are like good in terms of sketching out solutions on paper, I think that's a good way to start. And it's not compulsory that you have to learn Photoshop or you have to learn XD or Figma. Those can be learned once you're in the industry, right? So there's there's no restriction on that. So, and in terms of skills, I think communication is the most important skill, I think, in the industry. It is very important to know how to sell what you have done or you have already done when you're trying to get a job. And UX is all about the process that you follow in doing your project. So if you can't sell your process, you can't sell how you can sell why you did something the way you did it, and what process you followed. I think it will be very difficult for you to land a job just based upon the visuals or the things, because visuals is something that everyone can get from the internet, download a kit from the internet or something. But the process is what really matters in user experience jobs, I would say.
Yeah,
All right.
communication skills. Communication skills are super important, and communication, not just one sort of communication. You have to communicate up, down, and across. You need to be able to communicate to your peers. You'll have to do a lot of convincing to your maybe development or product management peers, right? And you'll have to do a lot of communication with maybe your client, and maybe you'll have to talk to users. You need to be fluent in a couple of languages, maybe English and Urdu, and maybe sometimes even Punjabi, right? So they're not just one kind of communication. You have to communicate across the board. So maybe a designer might be the one person who has to communicate a lot with everyone, basically everyone within your team and outside of your team as well. So communication is very important. Get out there and talk to people, different sorts of people, not one kind of people. So yeah.
Some people say that it's nice to have front-end development skills for UI UX. How true is that?
I think if you have the basic knowledge of it enough to give enough that you're able to handle the questions that developers come up with regarding your design, I think that is enough for that. You don't need to be a hardcore front-end developer if you're pursuing a career in UI and UX. You won't be coding if you're into UX, right? Most probably. So there we see some job applications where people people have posted UX developer positions as well, where they require you to do everything. They require you to do UI UX and also development. But every company has their own path to learning, and I think there'll come a time when they realize what UX actually is. But I don't think there's much need of front end development here.
Yeah, but
All
just
right.
to add to that, um, because design is still a developing industry in Pakistan, you'll see roles that ask you to be able to develop. It's quite common, but then those roles are more, so the UX part sort of diminishes in that role, but it's more focused towards UI and then also sort of development. At Ideate itself, we have many people who are polished, like experienced UI designers, but they can also code. So that actually puts you in a very beneficial position as well, in a very unique and beneficial position, because you are someone who essentially can make an interface that looks good, and then you can also take it a step further and then develop it. So if again I would stress on the fact that if this is something that appeals to you, you should try it. There's nothing wrong with being a good UI designer who can also develop.
Obviously.
But if UX is your focus, then that's slightly more towards the side of where you don't really get into development. But again, it's up to what you really want to do. But so to summarize, UI plus having good UI skills plus being able to develop, that's actually a pretty good combination.
Yeah, and the industry actually has a term for it. You're called a unicorn designer if you know how to design and develop. So if you want to be a unicorn, please go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Kanza and Hussam. My last question for this phase is, how important is networking in this industry? I get that there's a Facebook group as well, UXTP. So regarding that, how important it is that you stay active on such platforms? Sania, would you like to take that question?
Yeah, sure. So basically, networking is super important in the industry that we're in today, and I cannot emphasize enough on it. it's very important to showcase your work. It's very important to let people know what you're doing. It's very important to tell people what is up here, essentially, because this is what you're, what you're valued for. And like, this is again circling back to what Hussam and Moazam and Kanza and all of these people have mentioned, that you need to tell people that you have a certain skill. You have to emphasize on the why. It's not what you're doing, but it's essentially why you're doing it and how you're doing it. And if you're able to sell it, then you're good to go. And to do all of these things, to market yourself well, to showcase your work, networking is super important. And I'm sure like all of the other panelists would agree on that note.
Yeah, certainly. I think networking is what gets you jobs in the end, right? The design community in Pakistan is very small, I would say. There's like everyone knows every other person. If you don't know someone knows them. So it is this way, and it is very important to know people within the industry so that you can assess companies as well. You can ask someone, if you're going into a company, you can ask someone how the UX process for that specific company is, and this is of extreme importance if you are with a learning mindset when it comes to UX. So like, it is extremely important. Like, we can't stress enough on that.
And yeah, and adding to Moazam's point, I just feel like, networking also kind of helps what's going on in the industry. So when you talk to people, what other people are up to. And if it resonates well with what you want to do or where you see yourself in the next 5 years or so, you're more than welcome to, apply there and go on and around about it. So it's a small industry right now. We aren't software engineers. We aren't, business analysts or any other field. We're in this UX industry. It's a very, very small industry, and it's super interconnected in this moment.
Yeah, also I think networking, the word networking itself gets bad rep because because people think that it's just to build connections, to have this repertoire of entire 300 or so connections. You are not doing talking to people to build connections. You are build maybe contacts, right? You are talking to build actual genuine connections. You want to talk to people because maybe you seek help, you are struggling with something and you find that person who could help you most, and you talk to them, and people are genuinely very helping. They want to help you, they like helping you. I haven't encountered anyone in the industry who's ever said no to any questions I've ever asked, right? So there are only two ways, the way I see it, to go about it. You either want to help people or you seek help, and you genuinely seek help. You're not just asking a question for the sake of it. You have questions and you want answers to them, right? And those answers would lead you somewhere. That could be solving a problem, that could be any sort of professional question, like for example seeking a mentor. So you want to build genuine connections for them to last, not just to have contacts in your contact list.
So adding to what Kanza said, it reminds me that mentorship is extremely important in the industry itself, because unfortunately you don't learn a lot of UX when you are at at your university. You will maybe do a project, maybe, or have a course or two, but seeing how it in practicality UX works, I think mentorship is extremely important in the industry. You need someone who guides you regarding processes, regarding how to conduct all those practices. So yeah.
Okay, so I'll take over from here. So now that we've basically talked about basically how to prepare for the industry as an undergrad, we will now move on to the application phase. So my first question is basically about how and where to start looking for UX roles as a fresh graduate. For example, I've been looking at some UX roles because I myself am a graduating senior. So like मैं जो भी job देखती हूँ उस पे usually ये होता है कि 2 साल का experience चाहिए, and then like obviously as a fresh graduate you won't have that experience, right? So where do we exactly start looking for it? And दूसरा ये कि one question that really comes to my mind is कि there are two conflicting perspectives कि एक तो मतलब UX को properly practice नहीं करते industry में, and when you go to the industry तो वही front end development आपसे कराते हैं या graphic designing कराना शुरू कर देते हैं. So like where do you find a role which is actually like जहाँ पे वो लोग proper UX process को follow कर रहे हैं, and like so basically where do we start looking?
Ideate में. Go ahead, Kanza.
No, please go ahead. I follow.
So I was about to just say that I think that's a valid question, and I understand the confusion. How are you guys supposed to know that before you are applying to this sort of specific role? What I would recommend is to reach out to people like me and the other panelists as well, because I think I can give you like names of some companies that have started taking like design more seriously. Of course, there are the other companies that all four of us work at. Those are good options. But more than that, I would also again ask everyone to think about what they want to do. Again, is it do they want to focus on a product? Do they want to focus on a service? If they're unsure and they just want to explore, then honestly join any company as long as you know that there are going to be people there to learn from. And ask around, ask people like me. I don't mind, being contacted by anyone. You can reach me out on LinkedIn and you can ask me about, what I think about a role that you've come across. But I feel like that's sort of the best way to help you guys. But generally, if someone's asking you that they want you to do UX design and UI design and development, that itself is a sign that you probably shouldn't apply there, because that's not a company that takes that doesn't have that level of maturity in their design practice yet.
Right.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Yeah.
so adding on to what Hussam said, basically, you need to be wary of what of the companies who have like very misleading the job roles, I would say. So you need to be clear on what the process is, and that in order for you to screen that out, you should go and visit their websites and see what projects they have done and if they have any case studies on that. So that would give you a fairly good idea of what sort of work that they are doing right now. And other than that, as far as coping up with lack of experience is concerned, I think do dummy projects, right? That really helps. Do as much dummy projects you can do, and also learn how to sell your post projects in your portfolios. So if you do any dummy project, just make sure that to some extent you follow the process, the UX process, and you're able to sell that in a way. You can see most dummy projects like on Dribble, etc. They normally don't look that appealing because they lack the main process in that. So if you could create an application and interview like 5 of your friends, or while you're at university, you could look at you could interview students or something and create an application and give a solution to a problem that exists. That would cover up for the experience factor, I would say, unless it's a very hard requirement, because UX designers are very few in the industry. So you have a fair chance to land the job if you have the right process and if you have the right projects to show.
Also, like, this another thing that I would want to stress upon is the journey. Like, focus on this hiring journey, focus on this process, because there's a lot to learn from this process itself. It's not like you're going to interview today and you're going to land your perfect job tomorrow. It's never. 99.9% of the cases that will never be the case. If I talk from personal experience, and I'm sure other panelists would back me up, that I've learned a lot through talking to people as well at these interviews. And I've interviewed so many times, even at places where I had no intention of working. I hope they aren't listening, aren't on this panel discussion. But and talking to them actually made me realize what I wanted to do. So it's very important for somebody who's like right at the onset of their career, looking out for their job, to like take on everything that they see, literally everything that they see, talk to people. And it's very important when you're right at the onset of your career to talk to different sorts of people, talk to CEOs of startups, maybe go to bigger organizations, interview everywhere. And through that process and through that journey, you realize what you really want. And you also gain awareness on the kind of employers there are out in the market. Like Hussam said, if somebody asks you, development bhi kar do, तो visual design bhi kar do, and UX research bhi kar do, that's a red flag on its own, and you don't want to be landing in a job like that. So yeah, talk it out with your employer, and it's going to be a discovery of its own.
Right. Kanza, would you like to add something?
Yeah. So at the very beginning of your career, the roles would be, if I'm being very realistic, the roles would be sort of kind of hybrid. You'll be asked to do a lot of small things, and that would lead you to maybe gain more responsibility. That could be a sort of a hybrid UI designer / maybe graphic designer role, right? So you'll start there and then maybe move upwards, because companies are mostly very fast paced, and you have to teach a new person who is joining and doesn't really have a lot of experience. So you can't give them a lot of responsibility, and there's a lot of other work that is going on. So as a junior designer or a fresh graduate, it is your responsibility to take on as much work as you can. You cannot say that this is what I want to or this is what I can't do, because this is not my job role. You say yes to a lot of things, and then you prove that this is what I can do as well, and that's how you move up within one organization and within your role as well. So just be wary that you will have opportunities to get to that point where you want to get. Like, this organization follows this process. If I am moving along this path, I will get there. You cannot go into an organization jahan pata hai ke this role doesn't even exist, this is how it will stay forever. So that is also very important. And maybe in terms of projects you want to have, the dummy project route is sort of a slippery slope, because you don't want to give an impression that the designer, who maybe you're redesigning a product, right? Let's say you're redesigning a product that I designed, and you make a lot of assumptions that maybe this designer was stupid and they did not think of this, and I am thinking of all of these things, and this is how it should be done. What is important to understand here is to communicate that I do not know all of the constraints of the product, and if knowing that this is how I will design it in an ideal scenario, right? Not that ye kyun nahi hua, ye kyun nahi hua, ye kyun nahi hua. Don't sound obnoxious about that. So be very clear about what message you are sending if you're redesigning a project and if you're going that route. So yeah.
Also, I'm adding also answering the latter part of Mehreen's question, that what if you're underskilled as compared to the jobs out there in the market. I just feel that over time, even the employers have grown very, very flexible. They have gotten to appreciate your skill set more than your work experience. And I've personally experienced it in the industry as well. If they know that you have valuable projects on your resume or your portfolio, and if you have the right mindset that is needed to be in a job like this, they are willing to overlook the years of experience you have. So this is just a message out there for people who hold back themselves from not applying to jobs that demand loads of experience, that just do give it a shot. Who knows, it may work out.
Right. Okay, so moving on. The next question that we have is basically we've talked about this already a bit. Like जब आप fresh graduate हो and you're entering the industry, तो product design में जाना चाहिए, service design में. But like, what are some things that you should keep in mind while applying for roles? As in, जो design team का size है at a company, should you keep that in mind? Expected salary, etc. इस तरह की जो भी चीज़ है. Like, what are some things that you should keep in mind?
Mehreen, before we take on this question, I just want to know if Dr. Suleiman is still on. I feel like if we can promote him to a panelist, his input would be really valuable at this point.
Yeah, he is. He said he'd talk towards the end, but yes.
This is
I've
heard it.
To answer your question, I think like, things like the size of the design team is, a sign of how mature the design practice is, which I think I've talked about earlier as well, as how important that is when you're considering your first role. But one thing that I would highly stress on for people looking for new jobs is to show initiative. And that's really important in the design industry, because there is no degree in Pakistan yet, that you can sort of show, okay, this is the degree that I've done, so I know design, right? There's nothing of the sort that exists. We often see people from CS backgrounds, from graphic design backgrounds, but you really need to take the initiative to learn the skills that are required for UX design. Every panelist who's sitting here, we all had to do a lot of work ourselves to really learn what UX design is, what the process is, how do you apply it. There are lots of free resources online. And so when I'm looking to hire someone, what I want to see is, initiative in their CV, in their portfolio, right? And initiative, your portfolio is essentially a manifestation of your initiative, because people aren't, your degree isn't going to give you projects that you can showcase as part of your portfolio. So you want to take that initiative yourself and really show people that, I want to work as a designer. I want to learn more about design. This is the proof. I've tried to do stuff on my own. And so that's really important for us, when we're looking for people.
Right. Okay, so moving on, let's talk a bit about the portfolio for design roles. So like, how important is a portfolio for UX related roles? And I think we've talked a bit about what kind of projects should we include. So how elaborate should be the portfolio, and जो आप case study लिख रहे होते हो उसके अंदर वो उसमें क्या क्या चीजें reflect होनी चाहिए? Like for example, the design process and everything. And another question that I have is that should it be a web portfolio या फिर PDF होनी चाहिए? So what should the platform be? I think Kanza, you can answer this question.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll ask your second question first. Web or PDF? It's having a web presence helps overall. You can have your portfolio on Dribble, you can have your portfolio on Behance, or you can have your portfolio on Medium even, right? So having a web presence helps overall in people discovering you, in sharing, and in other avenues as well. And I think the most important thing is to have your entire portfolio in one place. You don't want to send one Dribble link, one Behance link, one Medium link, and one PDF, right? So it helps to have the entire portfolio in one place. And PDFs, if you are sending a PDF, one route to go maybe follow is that have sort of a portfolio preview in your PDF, and then you can, once you get to the interview part, you can showcase your entire portfolio, which maybe you have in your laptop in different formats, right? So within that PDF, you can have preview of various different projects. The way to structure that is have one or two projects where you go deep into the project. That could be one case study or two case studies. Those case studies could be actual projects or self-initiated studies that you maybe did through competitor analysis by looking at other projects and things like that. A couple of case studies, and then you have to show your visual design or UI design skills. And then you have another good thing is to show a breadth of work, maybe show glimpses into other work that you have done, which you can maybe present later on into the interview. The entire purpose of the portfolio is to get to the interview part. There's a saying within the design industry that UI gets you the interview and UX gets you the job, right? So you need to impress especially if you're looking at a design centric role and not a research centric role, right? So you need to grab the attention of the recruiter through your visual design skills. A recruiter goes through your portfolio in 4 to 5 minutes, right? 4 to 5 is a lot of minutes. It's usually 2 to 3 minutes. They'll skim through your portfolio and then they'll see whether they like what they're seeing, and then they'll go into depth. You catch their attention through your visual design skills, and then they'll go into depth, and then they'll think, see how you think, and then they'll start reading through it. So I think that is important to build the way you present your portfolio, the way the portfolio is structured. Maybe you don't want to include everything you've ever done in your portfolio. You would want to pick a few projects, or a few of your best projects that you actually put some thought into, and that you can explain, and that also look, those which also look good in your portfolio as well. So yeah, that I think covers the basics of it.
Thank you, Kanza. Would anyone else like to reflect on this?
Yeah, I
Hussam.
mean, I can add a bit to the specifics of what, when we're looking for an about portfolio, right? Essentially, when you're talking about the design process, what I want to see in a portfolio is, while you were designing an app or a product, what questions you asked, why you asked those questions, what the answers were, and how those answers drove not just the design of the product, but also forced you to reassess the problem that you're really trying to tackle, right? Because as a researcher, a key skill is, about asking the right questions and then using those to really drive not only your development, but also your understanding of the problem. So that's sort of what we want to see. You try and highlight your decision-making process of why you made what you did.
Right, thank you. Sir, would you like to add something to the conversation?
No, it was very humbling experience to listen to all these remarks which have been shared, and I don't think that there's much to add. But maybe I can say a few things. But I have one question, and I was just wondering from last 1 hour. And I'd like to ask all of them, for all of you, that, if you go back maybe 2 years and 3 years, 17 and 18, so why do you think you got hired? What was in your resume that was so amazing that 3 of you have a CS background, and you have taken maybe 1-2 courses or something like that. So why did you get hired? Like, I just had to understand. Also, Kanza, for you, maybe because of your background from Jam University. So, tukka laga, yeah, there was some specific skill which you think you were able to cash.
Okay, so I think तुक्के लगने से आप कहीं पहुंचना is like, maybe you can fool someone for a day, you can't really fool them for years. So yeah, I think what got me hired was my skills in visual design. I was really good at visual design. शुरू में, अब तो I think वो deteriorate होती जा रही है, being UX centric, those skills. But the visual design, and I took a lot of initiative. I started doing freelance projects. I worked on Upwork a lot. It was called Odesk at that point when I started working. So I did a lot of freelance projects, and I just put myself out there, and I applied more or less everywhere. So that got me noticed, and obviously interview itself sort of gives an insight into how you think. So that helps as well. So I think a combination of my visual design skills and the way I thought, and I was able to sort of put that message across, that got me hired at that point in time.
So,
if I were to speak for myself, I think it was exactly the niche that I was working in. I mean, there are people who are like coders or CS majors, and there are people who are like, designers, visual designers, and there are people who are like marketeers and whatnot. There are good designers as well. For someone who was working right at the intersection of all these things, for someone who had the ability to bridge all of these fields, for someone who had, who wouldn't be going to a developer and speaking a fifth language of layer that they did not understand, or who wouldn't be talking to a layer of language with a designer that they did not understand. So for me, I was someone who could understand the languages of how all of these different people operated in. I did not know the language itself, but like, I had a fairly good idea of how it was. And I think perhaps that was it that, got me where I was, or, even if it was getting where I want, but, moving beyond that point and progressing to where I am today, I think it was that skill that has come all along.
Yeah, and like for me, if I'm honest, I think I used to carry my graphic designing portfolio as well to my jobs back when I was a fresh graduate. So that's something that to some extent I would have to say that it also mattered. And other than that, there was obviously HCI my approach with Sir Suleiman that caught the eye of recruiters, that I specifically mentioned in my resume as well. And other than that, at an interview stage, I think my first recruiter was very impressed by the analytical skills that I had. So we had like small, puzzling questions where he was judging how I looked at problems and how I attempted to solve them. So these would be the things that helped me land my first UX job.
Yeah, being obsessive and being sort of overly analytical is, I think this is one field where it really helps. Being sort of khapti ho jana, जैसे बोलते हैं about one thing, it helps in UX. So, yeah, Sam, you were saying something.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and that's actually sort of what I think my reason was as well. And this is not me saying it; it's because I talked to my employer later on as well. And I think it was really just you want to try and showcase that you really want to learn. I think back, to be honest, in some of the things that I said and did in my initial interviews, they were probably really dumb. In terms of like मैंने अगर ये design बनाया मैंने इस तरह क्यों बनाया मेरे mind में, like in my mind this was really good reason, but it's now that having worked so long in the industry, I know that wasn't a great reason, but just the fact that as a fresh graduate, you want to try and show these things, and I think that's something that I was able to do. And I was and even just the fact that I was very happy moving from a full-time job to an internship, because I really believed that I could learn a lot there. That's something I think that was really appreciated by the people that were hiring me.
Great, thank you. What Sania was saying, it reminded me of my first class in topics, advanced course we teach at Plums, where we talk about this different languages, and we talk about that how if you're in a position to speak multiple languages without translating them from second language to third language, I think that helps a lot. If you can understand the developer's language, and I think this is such a wonderful skill to have, because otherwise, though, very often you will see designers coming up with some nice cool designs क्योंकि उन्होंने खुद बनाने नहीं होते, तो जो मर्जी ले आए. तो so that disconnect from reality also, we would like to have freedom in our designs, but then and it's perfectly fine that you don't really know how this would be developed, but then there needs to be enough people who needs to know how it would be developed, and that's why you will see this DevOps and design ops integrating very well nowadays in different companies, and this whole idea that how the DevOps would meet a design op, and how these high-level meetings would happen, and how Scrum would change itself, both in the check-in meeting on Monday and the checkout meeting on Friday, and how these kind of handshakes would happen. They've become increasingly important, and that's why the requirements engineering and software engineering and user research and design, they're trying to be aligned in different ways, and there's a lot of research which is being done. We're not there yet in Pakistani industry, but I think when I hear for these young forces, we think this is kind of a world-class panel we just had. Anything they have talked about, if you have any other international panel, and I can tell you because I don't know enough, but I know a little bit about this world, and if you have this panel on any stage, be it in a top conference or be it in any other UX conference, people will be talking about the same things, what Kanza and Moazam and Hussam and Sania talked about, they'll not be talking about anything different. They'll be talking about the power of asking questions and the power of the passion and the power of being there at the right time and the power of this translation. I just thought that I'll just take 3-4 minutes because I was taking notes. Again, once again, there is not much to add. All has been said in a much better way. But I thought I'll just reflect on some of the points. And one thing, which has been said again and again, that how do you begin and where do you begin? So I think if you can look at it from two different perspectives. And one perspective is that ideally, ideally I would love to start with a company like Ideate or Designist or any other company where design is being sort of where the partners or the people at the top level are passionate about design, not only to practice it but also to spread in the country. But how many places do we have such places in Pakistan? Maybe VentureDive also, they try to practice design, and systems also tries to practice design. But again, the tech firms have their own flow, and the different kind of a force, and so ideally, yes, one has to begin with a great design company, but realistically, you could begin almost anywhere, and then you could also leave them, if you think that that's the only way to sort of find your space and find your say. And you do your best, you're very honest, but you just don't wait for the right company to come to you and tell you that we are there to help you out. You really have to experiment. There are only that many opportunities in this country. I almost every year, some of my top students end up in the top companies in Pakistan and also outside Pakistan. I would not name one company, but that's one of the top companies, in the telecom sector. One of my students applied there, got a job in a very different, domain. She worked there for a year. She got noticed by the UX team. उन्होंने पूछा आप यहाँ पे क्या कर रही हैं? उसने पूछा मुझे जॉब ये मिली है. इन्होंने कहा आपको तो कस्टमर जर्नी मैप का भी पता है और आपको तो ये भी पता है कि कोई साइकोलॉजी नाम की चीज होती है, आपको ये भी पता है कि कैसे होता है. And then she was being pulled from that space, and then she was brought to a different team altogether. And imagine that if she was waiting for the perfect match to happen, मेरे ख्याल में she would have been, working in my lab on 20,000 रुपया. So I think you need to sort of experiment also, and you just can't wait for this perfect opportunity. And Kanza also made an excellent point there that it would be hybrid. It would never be a precise job you would like to begin with. It just cannot be. With the kind of skill set you leave your academia, you're just not a perfect UI designer and UX designer and UX researcher and a software developer and whatever you call it. So it's just that it would be hybrid, and then you navigate your own on space. Another thing, which has been which might be undersold in this whole discussion is the power of UI designers. Believe me, it just looks cool that you're a UX designer, but UI designer is an extremely important area. And maybe we have better UX designer in this country than UI designers. We have very good we have very good graphic designers. We have decent UX designers, but we don't have good UI designers. Because UI designer is a very complex field where you have to have an understanding of some UX. You have to understanding of a complete graphic system and a grid system, everything else. And then you marry these two things and make a UI. And making good UI, where you go beyond what material design is saying and what human interface guidelines are saying, it's extremely difficult. And especially the kind of work which Ideate does, or which we designers do in my lab, do at LUMS, in the context of human-centered design for development or in the global south, your UI patterns are completely useless, in most of the cases. You really have to keep reinventing those patterns, and you have to keep reinventing these new ways. These UI patterns are also, very restricted when you work in banking industry and fintech industry. You have to keep thinking about how to your whole onboarding experience, which you learn, would not work when you make a banking app, or when you make a Jazz Cash app, or when you make Easy Pesa app. So how would you design those onboarding experience, keeping in mind the UX part as well as a graphic design part? I think that's where we need lots of people. And हमारा problem ये आता है कि we ship a perfect, a design in Figma, and then development team रोने लग पड़ती है कि ये हमसे बनेगा नहीं, क्योंकि आपने हमसे पूछा नहीं है. And then we designer always blame tech team को कि उनको नहीं पता, and then we have no, you know, जितनी कम empathy हम में as a designer है for the tech team, I have not seen anywhere else. You know, we are the one who practice empathy, and we have the least empathy for the tech team, because we think that we are the innovators, we are the front end, और हमने जो बना दिया वो उनका moral obligation उसको reproduce करना. And I think that's why the teams are talking about this integration of design ops and DevOps, and we do that in many of the projects, you know, and that has to happen. So I just wanted to bring that point in, that some of you might love UI, and it's perfectly fine to love UI. जिस तरह बाज़ लोगों को development पसंद है, they never want to be an architect, they never want to be the project manager, they want to die as a programmer, and it's perfectly fine to stay at that level and just be the best programmer on earth. And be a best UI designer on earth. So I think I just wanted to sort of bring that part in, because I think it's an excellent panel which we can keep as a recording and show it to keep sort of playing it for the people in the next couple of years, to sort of tell them that what are the needs. Another comment I wanted to sort of bring in from what has already been said. You know, I gave a talk, you know, maybe a year ago on how to be a UX designer in a startup. And for me, I'm convinced that if you want to be a UX designer in a startup, you have to be a bachku. That's a term I use because that's a term my mommy used to have it. And that's a bachku is a term that आपने बचे हुए 3 सालन मिला के उसको मिला के कोई नई चीज बना दी. You know, so आपके पास रात का वो बिरयानी में से कुछ बचा है और साथ कीमा बचा है और साथ कुछ सब्जी बची है, आपने कुछ नई चीज बना ली. And that bachko phenomena is what you need in UX, because UX के startup के पास इतना नखरे के पैसे नहीं है कि वो आपसे साथ कहे कि सर UX का 1.5 लाख का अलग बंदा आएगा और UI का अलग बंदा आएगा, थैंक यू वेरी मच, you know, मैंने ना काम करना है. So the moment you think about this precise clinical definition of your own field, you'll become useless for a big sector of the industry. So it's perfectly fine to be the one. I think Hussam ne Recult pe kaam kiya hai as a researcher, you know, and there would be many opportunities that you have to switch, you know, and you will never be a perfect UX researcher to begin with. So I'll just want to sort of bring it in that, you know, don't be a perfectionist in this way. Finally, you know, it's absolutely essential to have one. It's good to be jack of all, and it's good to have multiple skills, but there should be at least one thing where on which you're very proud of, you know. And that's why I asked this question from this team, that what got you hired. And you can easily see that everyone has this unique element. You know, they were all good at many different things, but there was one thing they were really very proud of, but they were able to sell that, you know, हम सब कुछ कर लेंगे लेकिन ये हमसे बेहतर शायद कम लोग ही कर सकें. You know, and I think that's one thing you can take in your final year project. If you're in a university जहाँ पे final year thesis होता है, आप वो काम कर सकते हैं. जहाँ पे आपका senior year project होता है, वहाँ पे काम कर सकते हैं. But you need to have this one big project जिसके बारे में आपके पास 5 मिनट के लिए बात करने को कुछ हो. You know, you should be able to tell a story with passion, you know, and it should come. हमारी एक टीचर हुआ करती थी कि वो कहती थी कि you know, when you love something, और टिड्डों बाहर निकलनी चाहिए, पंजाबी में कहते हैं. You know, there should be literally, you know, so that's a term she used to use. कि वो that has to come from really inside, that you're talking about that project. And if I can see a spark in your eyes when you're working about a project in my company, you're hired at that moment. If I can see in your eyes that you're passionate about it, if I can see, you know, with your portfolio, which is very dribbling or dribble driven, but I know that you have answered some questions. But then, you know, when you talk about your favorite project and I can see the spark in your eyes that, well, you loved it, I think it's already a great step. What happens actually, we miss that passion very often. So that's what. So now, I sorry it took extra some time, but I just wanted to sort of document these things because I thought it was such a valuable panel in terms of the answers which have been given by this wonderful panelists, that we can sort of close it with, or not close with me, I'm not that important, but close it with some of the notes, that can go with this conversation, which will stay on Facebook. So Marine, thank you very much for hosting it. And of course,
Thank you, sir.
in Pakistan, LUMS would be producing one of the best lot of UX designers, and we are producing, and we'll keep on producing one of the. I'm just sorry, I'm from LUMS, so that's the only thing I can say about my university. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Okay, so we've basically gone a bit over time. So like we still had one phase left, but I don't think हम cover कर सकते, otherwise वो काफी लंबा हो जाएगा. So what we can do is maybe everyone can give an ending note, and if you have any advice for the attendees over here, so like who would like to go ahead? And there are basically some questions in the Q&A panel, तो अगर वो कोई answer कर सकता है, so we could also do that.
Yeah, so one thing that I have seen in the industry, and I wish someone would have told me better, before, is that self-learning is very important here. Okay, and if you have a few good courses, from perhaps the CalArts courses on Coursera, or the Interaction Design Foundation is a great resource. So it significantly increases your chances of getting hired, within the industry. Especially when it comes to companies like VentureDive, they do look at the interaction design courses, and it just opens up your mind in terms of what you have to say at interviews. You get to know the terminologies, you get to know the language that you need to speak at interviews. So I think that is the gist of it to getting hired.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kanza, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, to basically just summarize what everyone said, there are two most important skills. You need to show the recruiters that you can think, and you need to show them that you can design and you have an aesthetic sense. If you can do both of these things, and you're a humble person, if you're obnoxious, you won't get hired at most good companies, or companies which are worth joining. So if you can tick these three boxes, you're good to go. So yeah, this is basically what a UX designer is.
Yeah. Adding to that, I think I would again circle back to what Dr. Salman mentioned, that, find your uniqueness. And trust me, it's not an easy journey. I banged my head in like multiple walls before I figured out what I wanted to do. It wasn't coding, despite being a programmer or someone who was in CS. It wasn't designing per se. I had to, just kind of figure out what really worked for me. And that journey itself would happen differently for different people from different backgrounds. And secondly, one thing that I'm gonna again say to everyone out there is be ready to, take challenging things onto yourself. There's no title that's good enough for you, or there's no title that's, that's very, very bad for you. Just work for whatever is offered towards you. I've worked at a startup myself, and I started off in that startup as I started off as a designer, then I went on to become a business analyst, then I went on to become a designer, and then back to project management, and then working in customer success. So this was my journey at a startup. I was outsourced to iSystems Limited. So again, it's about, and I feel like it is a journey that was important. It was like taking on that multiple roles time and again, which made me realize that, all right, I can do this as well. And that realization is something that will lead and open more doors for you.
Yeah, so as a parting thought, just you'll hear this a lot, that the design industry might be getting saturated, but that's absolutely not true. In fact, it's the complete opposite. I started working 4 years ago, and just the growth that I've seen in these past 4 years, where so many multinationals now have started sort of opening design specializations within their companies. It's a really, really good sign for the industry. So the opportunities are there. You just need to ask yourself what you want to do, and then just honestly just follow your heart and show people that you're willing to learn. So it's similar to what Sulaiman sir said earlier. You want to show people that you are passionate about learning, you want to learn, you want to improve, you want to hustle. And that's really, really important in this field, because this is such a new field in Pakistan, that you constantly have to self-learn, constantly reevaluate what you know, what you think you know, and continue to work on yourself. So just ask yourself what you want to do, and then the only way to figure out if this really is what you want to do is go out and experience it. Otherwise, you're never going to know.
Yeah, and just like on an ending note, I also want to end like this is, I know this is not a promotion platform of any sorts, but for me, attending the conferences also really helped. There's UX Pakistan, which I've been a part of for like more than 2 years, or it has been a journey for me. So sitting in those conferences and listening to people out there, people who spoke, people who were part of, the different panels that they were there, the hard work that has gone into designing those conferences and bringing in front of you an agenda of that conference that is like carefully curated by experts in the industry or the masterminds, that is very important. And somebody who's just at the onset of their career, who's trying to triage through where to go and where not to go, those kind of conferences and those kind of platforms and learning from those kind of people is also really important, and that would help you go a long way. So yeah, do like for people who are in their final year, sophomore years and all of that, just go out, attend these conferences. They are meant for you people.
Right. Okay, so thank you so much everyone for taking out time. And as someone who is also basically like passionate about design and UX, I think I've learned a lot from you all. And like I did some research on the design industry myself, और हमेशा बहुत ही conflicting किस्म के views मिलते हैं, and I was a little hopeless अभी आजकल जब मैं देख रही थी jobs वगैरह के लिए. But I think like there still is hope out there, and I've learned a great deal from you all. And yeah, so I would just like to thank everyone for taking out time and being here.
Yep. Thank you,
Marine,
Dr.
there's
for jumping on as well.
Thank you,
What?
thank you. It was lovely to have
I'd
you
like to
all.
add that there is a lot of hope. There isn't just a little hope, there's a lot of hope out there. So yeah, just go ahead. And yeah, thank you so
Yeah.
much for having us.
Yeah,
Thank you
and,
so much.
and everyone who is listening to this panel, I remember last year I had before Corona, before COVID, it was November 19, and I was making a list of the open positions people had asked me to help them to fill. There were about 32 positions. I had been asked to fill. I hired 11 people in one company to build a UX design team. We were unable to find enough people. We had to find people in China. So we find 3 people in China because there was not enough people out there. And so अगर कोई मुझे आज ये कहता है कि यहाँ पे कि उसको UX की job नहीं मिलती, I'm not gonna buy that. I'm not gonna buy it. It's just not right. If you UX की job बहुत है, problem ये है कि या तो आप उसके लिए उतने पैशनेट या तैयार नहीं है, ठीक है, या नखरे बहुत है. उसके अलावा कोई और मुझे ऑप्शन नजर नहीं आती, बिकॉज दे आर, मतलब सुबह शाम हम बात कर रहे हैं, हमें लोग नहीं मिलते. एंड सेकंड चीज जो मैं आपको बताना चाहता हूँ, स्पेशली ये जो वंडरफुल पैनल है इनके लिए, इस वक्त जितनी ज्यादा जरूरत हमें आप लोगों की है कि आप 1 साल के बाद when you start becoming design managers, इस वक्त जितना बड़ा गैप ये आ चुका है इंडस्ट्री के अंदर कि we don't find design managers. We don't have people a person like me could trust on, कि मैं कहूँ कि Hussam or Sania or Moazam or Kanza, ये मेरा vision है from a business and a product point of view, from a research point of view, and could you please execute it? And I want to disconnect myself from operations. And it's just very, very difficult to find these people right now, very difficult. So I think we are also going to a stage after maybe a couple of years, जहाँ पे आप देखेंगे कि आप हमारे पास एक lot of design managers भी आ जाएंगे. जब वो आ जाएगी और वो इस पोजीशन पे होगी कि वो decision making position पे आ जाएंगे, वो they'll be in a position कि जहाँ पे वो company के अंदर they'll be in a power to take some solid decisions, and then you will see a big change. So in the next 3-4 years, you will see this whole lot of enthusiastic designers will be one step here, and then be talking to at a different way to different people. So I think there's a big hope. And it has become an enabling industry like CS. So ऐसा हो ही नहीं सकता ज़रूरत ना रहे. It's just not possible. It's just the math doesn't support it. बस अब अपना काम करते रहे, or just get ready for this. Thank you, Jay.
Hey, thank you, sir. Before everyone leaves, can we take a picture of the panel ताकि हम social media पे लगा लें?
मैं तो नहीं हूँ पैनल में, मैं जा रहा हूँ
सर आप नहीं, सर आप यहीं पे हैं. अच्छा
आपने मुझे मैं तो लोगों का नाम देख के मुझे पता भी नहीं था ऑनेस्टली स्पीकिंग कि आप 4 लोग आ रहे हैं. तो मुझे कल पता चला है कि आप ये 4 लोग आ रहे हैं, तो मैंने सोचा कि let me come and have my Friday night spent on UX again.
ठीक है, so let's take a picture. 1 2 3. ठीक है, done.
Thank
you
you
very much, everyone.
Have a nice weekend and thank you, everyone. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.
Hello.
Hello.
I think you're still recording.
Oh,